Yesterday, I did a video talking about this story coming out of Variety, where apparently Disney is starting to acknowledge that they pretty much ruined Marvel and Star Wars by trying to make them into girls' brands. But more interesting enough about this, though, is the fact that the media is willing to actually write about this sort of thing, because in the past, friendly media outlets would never dare do such a thing to Disney. But now it's actually gotten to the point where we've seen in the culture that it's actually acceptable to call out a lot of this garbage. And that's kind of where we're getting to the subject of today's story, because Snoop Dogg, of all people, decided to call out a lot of the woke garbage coming out of Disney in recent years. And he's pretty much echoing the sentiment of general audiences. But before we get into all this, if you're new to the channel here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you can, leave a comment, hit the like button too, and maybe share the video out because it helps out with the channel. All right, so let's look at this article from That Park Place. Snoop Dogg torches Disney Pixar as rap legend blindsided by Lightyear 2 mom scene. Quote, "I didn't come for this." So, yeah, apparently he went to watch Lightyear in theaters and was like, what are they doing with this sort of thing? One of the biggest names in entertainment takes aim at Disney. People notice that's exactly what happened this week when Snoop Dogg, the rap legend and cultural icon, openly criticized the Disney Pixar film Lightyear for inserting a same-sex parent subplot into what was marketed as a children's adventure. And Lightyear came out several years ago. And for people who don't know, it was a huge box office failure. Now, there was a lot of reasons why the movie was a box office failure, but after the movie was released, this element was obviously talked about quite a bit, and it's been attributed to as a big reason as to why the movie was a financial failure for the studio. His comments quickly went viral, igniting a cultural firestorm and raising fresh questions about Disney's insistence on injecting divisive political messaging into family films, and that is something that Disney has done in recent years. So far, though, it seems like, at least on the surface level, that they're starting to learn their lesson on that. And in more recent Disney releases, they've kind of walked these elements back, and I'll get more on that in a moment. Appearing on the It's Giving podcast, Snoop explained how the infamous scene created an awkward moment for him while watching the film with his grandson. Man, his grandson. It's just kind of weird for me to think Snoop Dogg's a grandfather right now, but yeah, I mean, he's definitely old enough. When the boy innocently asked, "Papa Snoop," that's actually kind of cute that he calls him Papa Snoop. "How'd she have a baby with a woman?" The rapper admitted he was blindsided. His blunt response, pulled no punches. "I didn't come in for this ish," Snoop said. "I just come to watch the movie." And yeah, I mean, parents, when they're taking their kids to watch a Pixar movie that's supposed to be a space adventure following Buzz Lightyear, you're not expected to be feeling such questions. Even if you have no problem with it personally, there's usually a time and place for certain things. Like there's always the sex talk when it's brought up with kids and stuff like that. Like, when do you actually have that discussion with your children? It's very difficult for parents. It's awkward, but it's something that they have to deal with at some point. And I think parents would rather kind of work their own way into that, or figure out like when they're going to have that discussion with their kid. But if they're going to a movie and that kind of subject is brought up, well, then they're at that point forced to have that conversation, or trying to come up with some other type of excuse. So usually they try to avoid those situations altogether. And that's kind of what it seems like he's talking about when it comes to this sort of thing. Like, I didn't want to watch this movie with my grandson to have this type of conversation. I just want to enjoy the movie with my grandson. And now I'm being forced to have this weird conversation that I wasn't expecting. Snoop continued by saying the scene threw him for a loop and left him scared to go to the movies now, because children naturally have questions parents and grandparents may not be ready or willing to answer in a theater setting. And I mean, that's what I was saying. It's just, they're being forced to have this conversation at a time where they don't want to necessarily have that conversation, or where they're not prepared to have that discussion with their kid. So, and as a result, they're like, well, then I don't want to have that type of conversation. So I'm just going to not go to the theaters, or I'm not going to take them to the theaters, or not going to take them until I can actually pre-screen the movie. And we've seen that with Disney releases in recent years, where a lot of their movies have been failing at the box office because parents are either like, well, I'll just wait for it to come out on Disney Plus, then I can watch it myself, determine if it's appropriate for my kids, and then let them watch it, because they're not going to pay the money to take their kids to theaters if they're not sure going into it if they're going to have these type of conversations after the movie is over. The controversial scene in Lightyear depicts Alicia Hawthorne, a fellow space ranger, and her wife raising a child while the kiss between the two moms was trumpeted as Pixar's historic first over same-sex relationship in animation. And that's another thing I think ultimately hurt the box office results of this movie, is that they were kind of touting this as a big deal before the movie release. And now Disney was starting to get cold feet before the release of it. So there are reports that they're wanting to remove it. But then Pixar people were starting to get mad about all that stuff and rebelling, especially in light of Florida trying to change their educational laws. And then Disney was forced by pretty much by their own employees to take a stand against that, which ultimately hurt them. But Disney still took that public stand against the state of Florida. They started inserting the stuff back into the movie, and the movie ended up becoming a financial failure for them. Now you look at more recent releases coming out of Pixar. Inside Out 2 was a prime example where there were some of those queer-coded elements in the movie, but Pixar executives reportedly, or I think it was Disney executives, but either way, some executives at the company told the employees to remove a lot of the queer-coded elements or try to remove any insinuation that the lead character Riley was a lesbian in that. They did that, and the movie was a huge financial success for the studio. Now, a lot of those employees have since come out and complaining about that. They were upset about having to do that sort of thing. But to Disney's perspective, when we made something that was trying to push an agenda or trying to make it clear that we have lesbians in this movie, it was a financial failure. Then when we have this other thing come out and it has none of that stuff in it whatsoever, then it's a huge financial success for them. Now, I'm not saying that's the reason Inside Out 2 was the financial success, but after the movie was released, a lot of people were saying there's none of those elements in the movie. They said it was just a good family movie that you could take the kids to. You don't have to worry about having these awkward conversations. So maybe the movie still would have been successful, but I don't think it would have been as successful as it was if it did try to shoehorn in some type of political agenda with it. So from that perspective, I think Disney has started to understand that, yeah, it's not good to try to shoehorn these elements into all of their things. And since then, we've seen a number of other projects where they've tried to remove that to varying degrees of success. This year, Elio came out and they reportedly removed a lot of those queer-coded elements from that movie. The movie was still a financial failure, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Like I said, with Lightyear, I don't think that was the only reason why Lightyear failed. I think there was a number of reasons why Lightyear failed. It's just that was the one that people sort of gravitated towards, and I don't think removing that stuff is the reason Inside Out 2 was a success. I just think that did contribute to making it as successful as it was. Just like I don't think removing that is the reason why Elio failed. I think there was a lot of reasons why people didn't want to go watch an original movie. Now, what does this mean? Why is this such a big deal when it comes to the entertainment industry? The fact, like I said at the start of the video, the media is willing to call this stuff out shows that there is a cultural shift where previously, if you were kind of saying these exact same things, then you would have been pretty much canceled. Snoop Dogg, for instance, obviously had to have watched this movie in theaters. So it came out a couple of years ago. He clearly had a problem with it then, but he's only saying it now because right now it's safe for people to actually call this stuff out. People understand that no one wants to watch this sort of stuff. And while they thought in the past that the people who are wanting this sort of agenda pushed in these movies were a sizable demographic who actually had some power within the industry, we've come to realize that no, it's just a very vocal minority on social media, and like probably not even social media, just basically a vocal minority of people just in Reddit threads who are just complaining about the inclusion of this stuff or stuff like this not being in the movie, but they're not the ones who are actually going out to support movies in theaters. The people who are actually supporting a lot of these Disney and Pixar movies are families, and families don't want this sort of thing in there. Disney tried out pandering to that one demographic for a time period. It hasn't worked out for them. So now they're shifting back to what they should have been doing to begin with, just paying attention to their family audience. And it's working out for them. So now we're seeing this cultural shift where it's okay to call out this stuff. And a lot of that stuff that was being pushed in the past, I think it's eventually going to get left behind, but still it's out there because a lot of the people at these companies are still trying to push it. But I think they're just kind of a dying breed at this point. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you can, leave a comment, hit the like button, and maybe share the video out there too, because it helps out with the channel. Thank you.